call that architecture. Look at that thing. It screams bibliotech. Sorry. Sometimes I get the impression that people watch my videos through through rehosts or like restreams. Um and that's like the optimistic point of view, right? Because it means that any of the videography, any of the intentional synthesis of audio and visual elements to convey a greater message are lost, right? Because uh what I really think would happen is my videos get transcribed by an AI whose transcription gets fed into a summarizer uh with maybe uh a sort of nuanced and a more attentive, more reflective of reality sort of database of sentiment data to work with, right? To summarize what I'm doing and what I'm saying, but and this data gets read by some business person who feeds it off to some young executive who disseminates it through the corporate structure. Um in whatever sort of strange, untraceable way. Which is sad, really, because that means anyone who's not watching it is losing out on all this wonderful insight and meaning that we could share, which is really the main point of doing this, to share meaning with your community. Um, we're back. We're in a different book. I did this a lot with Zuboff. I would have these periods of time where I would just not read any Zuboff because I would read like one paragraph of Zuboff that was like maybe 100 words, and I'd be like, "Oh fuck, this right here is full of so much meaning. I can't possibly understand what she's talking about right now." And then I'd read like a whole other book, and then it would be like, "Oh, okay, that makes a whole lot more sense now." Which is just adulting, but what we're doing here today. So this is Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It's Paulo Freire. Freire. See if I can say that 10 times in a row fast. Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. Um, and that's what we're gonna be reading. Bell Hooks loves it, right? So, you get rewarded for following up on what people have to tell you, and especially in learning, some reciprocation is required, some participation is required, really, to unlock these deeper meanings. So when you have a good instructor at your disposal and you have their material before you in this free and unfettered form, um, I think you owe it to yourself to take the time to go a little deeper into what they're saying so that you can unlock its meaning while it's relevant. Um, so maybe one of the more relevant texts I've read recently would be The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. So why am I not reading economic theory right now? Why am I not getting into the philosophers, the existentialist philosophers of the post World War II era? Those philosophers that define totalitarianism for us and help us understand, you know, what we stand to lose when we lose our free will. Well, I am. This is Pedagogy of the Oppressed. If you didn't know, oppression was not invented on Tumblr in 2014. Uh, Oppression is like this 20th century signal that you're about to understand the experience of people who find themselves uh, on the other end of that camera on TV, who are constantly recharacterized and recast as these caricatures of themselves until we forget they were ever caricatures and accept it as a part of this homogenized consumer culture. Um, why do I need to know this? Why do I feel like I need to know this? I need to be able to read something so offensive to me in particular and understand why it's offensive to me so that I can have a more cohesive understanding of what I'm learning. If I learn from old books, if I learn from new books, okay, at some point I'm going to internalize uh aspects of the structures of power left behind in those books by their authors for one reason or another. Um and I want to feel like I have the choice in my life as to where my power goes. If I become a powerful person, I want to be powerful of my own will. You know, I don't want to be someone who waits for a spreadsheet that has terms on it that I never defined, I never had a hand in defining, that end up defining the livelihoods of many people, maybe in a very narrow way that stays afloat by attracting investors. I don't need to live like that. I can attract investors on my own. Um, it's I'm taking a lot of time to make sure that what I do in the future is ethical in practice. Okay, so I have to be ready to see myself in contrast with others, especially those who succeed. Um, Mostly because I will be left to question what is true around me in this holistic sense for the rest of my life because I can't know everything, and that's natural and that's fine. It's okay to wonder these things. We just hope that we don't do it to our own detriment. That is when you are truly alone. And maybe being sympathetic or even empathetic to others will unlock relationships for you and that other person that could benefit your life in the long term. And you should make those relationships, right? Those beneficial relationships. So, we're here. We've traveled back in time to 1970, and we're going to read Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Those oppressed people, the oppressed people that were here before you were conceived, the oppressed people that made you think it was a word in the dictionary. These are people who organized and fought hard for what they have today. And it would be a shame to see these people end as factions and to not somewhat uh hey, how to speak. Fuck my life. And it would be a shame to leave these people as factions when we can observe their culture and understand how they fit into the ongoing processes throughout history so that we can best reciprocate the hard work that they put into substantiating themselves by carrying forward their goodwill into the future. We're here to be better people. Okay? That's how it works. And I work. Well, this is Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire. Maybe after this, I'll be able to absorb the white man's thoughts through text. Not really, but I'll feel better knowing that, I'm in there somewhere. Somewhere deep down, you understand this. Past all these little reminders and all these little cues that we give our white readers, you understand this. Just separate the cue from the knowledge. And it's that simple. You don't replicate the structure blindly. To the oppressed and those who suffer with them and fight at their side. Ain't it just a fucking fight? Here we go. Let's look at the table of contents. Publisher's foreword. Introduction to the anniversary edition. Foreword by Richard Schall. Preface. Contents. This is chapter 1. The justification. I love it when they do this. You guys ever is it Blaze Blue or is it or is it Guilty Gear where they give like a little monologue at the start of the fight? Which one is it? No, cuz I think it is Guilty Gear. But isn't that like such an Arxis thing? Cuz I'm trying to think. I'm like Rebel 1. Let's fight. But then that's Blaze Blue, I think. And then I think with what do you call it? Guilty Gear, the guy the guy goes into like a monologue or something, and then I don't know, he says, heaven or hell, strive one, or something like that. Chicks or dicks. All right. Chapter 1. The justification for a pedagogy of the oppressed. The contradiction between the oppressors and the oppressed, and how it is overcome. Oppression and the oppressors, oppression and the oppressed, liberation not a gift, not a self-achievement, but a mutual process. Up to this point, in the English-speaking world, there was a lot of text that existed surrounding this idea of like the colonizer and the colonized, because we were in this sort of post-World War II like existential period of time where men were shown horrors that they could never imagine, and were promised riches like they had always deserved, and kept treating people like property. Didn't really work out, but people became a part of this second modernity that was so much more aware of itself, and aware of how structures of power that had existed before had sort of failed to prevent a global crisis on the scale of World War II. And so this existentialism is almost like a necessary education on what is and isn't. um, that recognizes what people are saying, um, and like any sort of cadre of academic collusion can be used to redefine reality for people for a very long time. But the process itself admits that it's imperfect, and so it continues to age out old information, and those who participate were there. Um, Very interesting. That someone would just like, man, I don't know. Guess someone would have to tell me what they're thinking about it. But yeah, I don't know. Everything got really melodramatic and it was really cool, and I still fucking love that melodrama shit. Harold and Maude, that's basically my life. Midnight Cowboy, tell me about it. Not a gift, not a self achievement, but a mutual process. A lot of people saying this mutual process thing. But isn't that a conspiracy to get me to agree to things that aren't white and violent? Really makes you think. Chapter 2. Sorry, I'm going a little slow cuz I'm eating my dang old sandwich here. My ding dong, my ding dong. I'm eating my own ding dong. I'm eating a dang old sandwich here. Guys, I'm eating a ding dangle a ding dangle. Make it stop. I'm dying. I'm dying. All right. I'm eating a dang old sandwich. I'm eating a dang. I'm eating a dang. I'm eating a. I'm eating a freaking sandwich. A flippin' sandwich. I'm eating a sandwich, guys. Hold on. Guys, I'm eating a sandwich. And that's why we're going slow. Why we're going slow right now. Oh, that sounds cool. Oh, people as incomplete beings, conscious of their incompletion and their attempt to be more fully human. If I was going to read any one thing from this book, I would start at chapter 2. Ooh, woo wee. Woo wee. It's sock puppets. Be nice, right? Like, whenever I'm doing a bit, I pull up a sock puppet, have it do that bit for me. The banking concept of education. We're going to fill the banks with a lot of banks. Its presuppositions, a critique, the problem-posing concept of education as an instrument for liberation, its presuppositions, the banking concept and the teacher-student contradiction, the problem-posing concept and the supersedence of the teacher-student contradiction, education, a mutual process, world-mediated, people as incomplete beings, conscious of their incompletion and their attempt to be more fully human. Dialogics, the essence of education as the practice of freedom. Dialogics and dialogue. Dialogue and the search for program content. The human world relationship. Generative themes. Ooh, oh, generative themes. Oh, generative themes. Generative themes. And the program content of education as the practice of freedom. The investigation of generative themes and its methodology. The awakening of critical consciousness through the investigation of... Oh, hold on. Wait. Generative themes? Yo, what the fuck? Generative... Dude, awakening of critical consciousness through the investigation of generative themes? Dude. Ah. Oh. Where's my Nintendo DS? I need to show off my theme. The various stages of the investigation. See, sometimes you just know. Sometimes you arrive at a piece of literature and there's, I don't know, maybe something in you that you just can't necessarily articulate that gives you this insight into where your focus is going. I see it all as rats in a maze. Rats in a maze, knocking doors, looking for cheese. And it's all me. I'm every rat. What is this guy doing? No. What is he doing? He's like tailgating a police officer who's trying to like slow down traffic. He has this bright red leather dashboard and it looks crazy. He's got like the fat spoiler. Why does it... What is the sound? What is this song? It's like it's like some song about drifting or something. She's so normal. I hate her. Okay, I'm sorry. I just someone made her normal and now they hate her. If you know, you know. We're not gonna spend any more time on this. I'm going crazy. Yeah, that's my mute. I'm gonna go crazy. But do you guys remember that time that P-Jack was like, I get a Tanta drunk? And then they're like, a Tanta lol. And then he goes, shut the fuck up. And then it's like this like hip hop song. It's really good. It's really it's just like just being fucking crazy, just being ready to execute anyone. Just be ready to execute anyone. Alternatively, it is the white man's play, and you must recognize. We're talking about oppressed people today. Anti-dialogics and dialogics as matrices of opposing theories of cultural action. Anti-dialogics, the former as an instrument of oppression and the latter as an instrument of liberation. The theory of anti-dialogical action and its characteristics: conquest, divide and rule, manipulation, and cultural invasion. The theory of dialogical action and its characteristics: cooperation, unity, organization, and cultural synthesis. This is a 4-chapter book. It's so tiny. Wait, is it really that short? Now, I usually say this, but can we finish this today? Do you think we can finish this today? No. No, because he's going to say one thing and then I'm going to reread it like 5 times and I'm going to speak about it for 3 hours. Let's just read the last paragraph of the introduction because I think that's really nice and antithetical. I always accepted with humility Paulo's challenge through the coherence and humility he exemplified. With much sadness, Magoa, but also with much hope, much affection and hope, I say once more, thank you, Paulo, for having for having been present in the world, for having given us pedagogy of the oppressed, for having taught us how to read the world, and for challenging us to humanize the world. But that's by Donaldo Macedo at University of Massachusetts, Boston. Distinguished Professor of Liberal Arts and Education. And their notes for the introduction. Love that. I don't care. People should read these things in their free time. Look at it in your free time. I want to stand up. Today's just like, it feels like a standing kind of day. My back's been hurting me. Like right here. Like not where I'm touching obviously, but at this level, if you like go to my spine, it's been hurting me. So, I don't know, I feel like standing today. Get some flippy floppies on. feel like standing today and wearing flip-flops. And we're gonna put our elbows up like Confucius. Okay. Chapter 1. While the problem of humanization has always, from an axiological point of view, been humankind's central problem, it now takes on the character of an inescapable concern. Oh man, ooh, I'm already getting achy. What the fuck? I think I can hold my. Can I hold them straight? Can I hold my elbows up straight? If this was ever gonna be hard to read, it's also gonna be hard to stand. Oh, what's my arm doing? Wait. Hold on. I'm achy where? I just, I don't think this would ever be funny. I don't think what's happening to me is funny. I'm being assaulted. Okay, elbows up, like Confucius says. Trying to stand up straight. While the problem of humanization has always, from an axiological point of view, been humankind's central problem, it now takes on the character of an inescapable concern. Concern for humanization leads at once to the recognition of dehumanization, not only as an ontological possibility, but as a historical reality. That's true! That's true! People are always asking me, what then? The opposite? People always, they hear me say ridiculous shit, and you know how they translate it? They fucking flip it backwards. Like it's some reversible thing. They look for they look for terms on which it is diametrically polar, and then they use the polar opposite. Like, what the fuck? People are doing this all the time. What the fuck? Really, it must be to bait and switch me. You must know I'm sensitive and lonely. You must know. You must know, because if someone's sensitive and lonely, fuck, they're gonna have problems and shit. They're gonna be a real party pooper, and I can't say I'm doing the right thing if I don't try to help them. It's gonna destroy me inside. Which is to say, I might lose some follicles off my germ if you catch my drift. If you sniff my stink, then you know that sometimes talking to someone is just a means to an end. People still view each other as largely devoid of content, despite stating emphatically that they don't view others as like a means to an end. So I'm beginning to understand in my own life how I've come to this conclusion. But I want to believe that Paulo Freire, sees this from maybe a different point of view. And I'm very excited to understand what his point of view is. Because it could be my point of view, but sort of like, defetishized and not so romanticized, not so wrapped up in personal experience. Maybe he sees it as a pattern amongst many people who he's viewed as an expert. Let's hear more. And as an individual perceives the extent of dehumanization, he or she may ask if humanization is a viable possibility. This is true! You ask people to invent a society, one of the first things they invent is a prison and a bank. Like, it's second fucking nature. I'm going crazy. What's going on out here? How can things be different if this thing that I think is essential to reality is gone? and it's ironically enough, these people who also vie for those positions, or at least wish to be viewed positively by people who vie for those positions. So what the fuck is that? Small game, dude. It's not gonna change if we change these other things. It's like an obsessive contentment with being under the thumb of another person. That's that's all coming from me. Let's see what else there is to it. Within history, in concrete, objective texts, both humanization and dehumanization are possibilities for a person as an uncompleted being conscious of their incompletion. Okay. That's been told in like every story that I've ever grown up with. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what he means by this, but I know like morally, like somewhere in my moral fiber, I must believe that people are pure and like redeemable and like, worthy of forgiveness, however you want to put it, right? Somewhere within my psyche, I've learned this. And I think I've internalized it more deeply than most people. But I've definitely seen that in stories. That isn't to say that altruism does not have its advantages for society. It's just to say that altruism can be easily misled. Okay. And that I qualify my statement like this is what gives me more credibility, really. And what did I do? I just took the opposite of what I was saying and said, well, let bygones be bygone. Get out of my hair. Which is really funny because it insists that I have some control, I have some private ownership, some entitlement over like space and borders, and that I have some grounds to like forcefully remove people from anywhere that I am, assuming that I'm not gonna go everywhere that person's gonna need to be at that given time. It's kind of crazy. It's not thinking with my resources. I'm not really individuating. I'm not significantly observing what resources are at hand and what I really feel entitled to and what I am entitled to technically. Which I think perpetuates itself through these social entanglements to mean that my happiness is contingent on this idea that like a space can be incorporated into someone's de facto ideas of like entitlement and human rights, which comes back at me at full force as more and more of my free time is mediated via this technology that is built to observe and terminate people's presence. A lot of what he's saying still stands true. I'm willing to believe that this idea of humanization is central to our concerns. But while both humanization and dehumanization are real alternatives, only the first is the people's vocation. This vocation is constantly negated yet it is affirmed by that very negation. What does he say in the footnote? The current movements of rebellion, especially those of youth, while they necessarily reflect the peculiarities of their respective settings, manifest in their essence as preoccupation with people as beings in the world and with the world, preoccupation with what and how they are being. As they place consumer civilization in judgment, denounce bureaucracies of all types, demand the transformation of universities, changing the rigid nature of the teacher-student relationship and placing that relationship within the context of reality, propose the transformation of reality itself so that the universities can be renewed, attack old orders, and establish institutions in the attempt to affirm human beings as the subjects of decision. All these movements reflect the style in our age, which is more anthropological than anthropocentric. Right. Because, the bourgeoisie is often touted as the one class who has ever successfully orchestrated rebellion or a revolution. So it's very understandable that while we argue with the bourgeoisie, that we do shift to these anthropological terms over these anthropocentric terms, because of their intense deconstruction of social contracts and power that often lead themselves to these sort of fascist revolutions that create this split narrative between the fascist nucleus, officers, and anyone else down the chain, and sort of these intricate patterns that become history and mythology, and MOs and cults and gangs. Thwarted by injustice. Hold on. But while both humanization and dehumanization are real alternatives, only the first is the people's vocation. This vocation is constantly negated, yet it is affirmed by that very negation. It is thwarted by justice, exploitation, oppression, and the violence of the oppressors. It is affirmed by the yearning of the oppressed for freedom and justice, and by their struggle to recover their lost humanity. So his belief that humanization is central to people's concerns seems to have everything to do with this paradigm. I think what he's presupposing is that inscribed roles and power structures in society that organize those roles first come from a place that is social, and I'm assuming are decided in like a democratic kind of way, right? He is supposing that democracy is the way of the land implicitly here, which is why it's very important that he places this humanization at the central sort of at the center of like people's concerns, because it's very persuasive. I think getting people to change their minds is difficult, and has a lot to do with where people are at a given time and where they think they can go and what they think they can buy and what they think they can access and what they think they can influence, right? Which are matters that are far beyond the scope of publishing a book. So he's decided to lean into that, take on this rhetorical strategy in which no one changes their mind. They change their ontology. They understand themselves as people who already agree, which I think is pretty persuasive. And why? Because I think it reflects compromise in our day-to-day lives. I think if you're going through your day and you're anybody, you're not someone who's going through this extensive cultural education on how to centralize power and how to negotiate your place in the world as someone who is not truly fit to hold office but does anyway by virtue of being this conservative that maintains the status quo. I think anyone else, including those people's constituencies, can agree that we believe in equal rights. Okay, and how are those equal rights protected under a constitutional government? By litigation. Okay, by participating in democracy through the recognition that this Constitution is an imperfect representation of that democracy. Okay, it's very important that the Constitution is so central to all of this because it's something that guides this sort of democratic thinking and its process. It allows us as citizens of our nations to think within these cosmopolitan terms, to better understand how larger issues of interdependency can be unraveled through cooperation from the people and the government. But how is this cooperation ever going to be substantiated or fulfilled? I mean, clearly through a republic, right? Through some kind of form of democracy, right? We pick representatives, right? Okay, well, where are those representatives coming from? Ideally, they're coming from places where people recognize the issues and can tackle the issues in a reasonable fashion. And ideally there's a dual movement going on anytime serious dysfunction needs to be addressed, because the fact of the matter is if you centralize power and create these conflicts of interest as a way of enhancing your chances to continue to make money through this office, through this station, weaken aura is much stronger than strengthen aura, right? Because in gamer terms, if you embolden the public and you educate the public, then the public will come and serve the office under the terms that the public was able to learn, which is equality. Okay, there's no greater threat to you and there's no reason to give up, right? If you continue to reify this idea of hierarchy and negativity and sunk cost fallacy and granularity disappearing in favor of efficiency, right? Big fucking air quotes around efficiency. Then the people who are going to be running for office are going to be alone. These are going to be people who, through some orchestration of interpersonal and now like tech mediated like meetings, has found their way to being emboldened to pursue success. Their success story diverges from the cultural norms because of these interventions, right? And that's not great, because if that person sees themselves as alone, then how are serious issues like those pertaining to like education or people's freedoms to act the way that they feel is necessary in any given situation in their free time, feeling like someone can rely on the things that are justifiably more powerful than any given individual or institutions created by individuals, right? How can these power imbalances lead to anything but quid pro quo in this way that directs our society towards the centralization of power and therefore the reduction of need
for human beings to be present at a given moment to deliver the honest truth. How can you mediate that by with like a public that tells everyone that they're a failure until one guy thinks he's like the only one capable of doing anything? Like it requires human will to fix these deeply involved issues in the system. Changing one piece of legislation isn't going to fix anything, and that's true, right? So you need people to autonomously identify these issues as well and to act upon them. But if acting upon them means pursuing this station or pursuing communication with this station, where's the back and forth? Where's the go ahead? Where is any sort of rationalization or justification to make changes that embolden people to change the world? Why aren't people going for the office if people are going to participate on a smaller scale to assist us in easing these crises? And these capitalists get away with it every year. Why do you think ICE gets so much funding? Because ICE can hire everybody and create this dual movement over the terms of what? The terms of which the government is allowed to give money, which is in like these extreme situations where like the country's in crisis and can't regulate itself on a lower level because of some grave societal dysfunction. You don't see people giving more money to public schools because they're going to say people don't do anything with schools. If they knew it was a problem, they'd be here running. They'd be here doing this. They'd be here doing that. And they're not. So it's like this idea that you weaken the public is very common, which is why this narrative is like resonating with me right now. So yeah, humanization has to be central to this because he believes his rhetorical strategy, once again, is to shift your ontology. You don't necessarily have to agree or disagree with anything different than how you feel now, right? But ontologically, you are more enabled from your own position to do this for yourself. You never have to betray the pack. You never have to be in the out group. You don't have to commit social faux pas or whatever. In 1970, the effective thing to do is to go with the flow and just shift the ontology. This is becoming less possible today, but people will continue to write books thinking this, and I'm gonna have to rage. I'm gonna fucking rage, man, because shit's not working, dude. And so I'm here. So I'm here to learn from this. So I can be like, oh, dude, that's so funny. That's like a Paulo Freire reference. That's like a Bell Hooks reference. That's like, what kind of reference is that? Kind of, you referencing something? That's the point I'm getting to. Like, geez Louise. Why are you like this? Why are you like this? Was it Telecom? Viacom? Is it Viacom? Did they do this to you? Is it Coca-Cola? Alright. No, it was Natural Foods, wasn't it? Okay. Anyways. Dehumanization, which marks not only those whose humanity has been stolen, oh, Dark Souls mentioned, but also, though in a different way, those who have stolen it, is a distortion of the vocation of becoming more fully human. This distortion occurs within history. Sorry, my leg cramping. This distortion occurs from within history, but it is not a historical vocation. Indeed, to admit of dehumanization as a historical vocation would lead either to cynicism or total despair. The struggle for the struggle for humanization, for the emancipation of labor, for the overcoming of alienation, for the affirmation of men and women as persons would be meaningless. The struggle is possible only because dehumanization, although a concrete historical fact, is not a given destiny, but the result of an unjust order that engenders violence in the oppressors, which in turn dehumanizes the oppressed. Be excellent. Be excellent to people. That's why do you think people are like that? Oh, be excellent today. Tell someone you had a good day, because at some point you're the image of the ideal citizen to someone else. You gotta spread that positivity. And ask of people to be excellent. I mean, what's the alternative? Return to tradition? What if I spell return with a V? How you feel about that? It's not great. Because it is a distortion of being more fully human, sooner or later, being less human leads the oppressed to struggle against those who made them so. Because it is a distortion of being more fully human, sooner or later, being less human leads the oppressed to struggle against those who made them so. In order for this struggle to have meaning, the oppressed must not, in seeking to regain their humanity, become in turn oppressors of the oppressors, but rather restorers of the humanity of both, which is really difficult because the image of human nature is a huge spot of contention for people who have the means to change. So it's a highly contested place of mental real estate to give the person to give the nature of human beings. It is the work of historians to tell us how people lived. Historical anthropology is really exciting and finds its way into the news constantly. Because it reveals the truth about odd things about yourself, and I think taps into a sort of evolved propensity to desire information about oneself from someone who appears to be a trusted source. Because people are sort of brought up in this way that they enjoy accepting this information, and this information about human nature is delivered in like a discernibly similar way. I think it hits. I think people really get into that. Sorry, I'm like being assaulted. I'm like, oh fuck. My back sounds like bubble wrap right now. It is like, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And my shoulders keep rolling forward. It's really annoying. Okay. And anyways, back to my video. What were we talking about? Talking about distortion. Yearning of the oppressed and their struggle to recover lost humanity. I'm like going over everything I just said in my head. and I'm still being like assaulted. Like, so I ended on in order for the struggle to have meaning, the oppressed must not, in seeking to regain their humanity, become in turn oppressors of the oppressors, but rather restorers of the humanity of both. Um, Based on what? You know, that's where all this questioning sort of leads us to, and this journey through like human nature leads us to, is based on what? Based on what? Based on what? You know, people want like some kind of like concrete fucking precedent for it. Um, and the democracy doesn't provide. The democracy is failing to provide a concrete precedent for the uplifting of human beings by way of this like volunteering, of this like voluntary thinking, right? Like the idea that people are volunteering for something and constantly being missed is invisible to policymakers, right? And so we're trying to see where people's will to volunteer to be better for society, to humanize society, fails, right? Um, that's how we find the other people, according to Paulo Freire. Somehow, all this free will is being misdirected towards the image of something that can only be interpreted as like something negative, and policymakers willingly see this as a pocket of unsubstantiated nothingness that, while is very tempting and does suggest that maybe giving people this money would be the right thing, is ultimately ignorable and hard to justify on bipartisan terms, which is maybe why, since this book has been published, American performance in education has only tanked. Um, Plenty of reasons to complain about that, though. Oh, my gerb. Um, we want to be the restorers of humanity, which is difficult. I mean, restorers is such a loaded term, right? Because like we don't have access to this like very human history that elites are weaponizing as we speak as these sort of psychological moments. Because I mean, like history is just sort of like the very like thorough, like scientifically sound observation of like artifacts and records, right? That's like my understanding of history, right? So you can redefine human history um according to how people behave. So to have access to like the means of understanding history, you have to have like access to the means of like understanding like psychology and like personalities and identity and things like that. Which is why I don't trust famous people on any scale today, because they're probably just some rich person who got like fed a bunch of booster items and like now wants to like say that they're like me. Which frankly is an insult and is the first declaration of the terms on which you two will relate, which is image alone. Any agreements you two have is based on image and myth and can be evaporated from this person's rationale like that easily. And for pretty good reasons too. Uh it's a dirty bunch. It's a real dirty bunch playing as the stars these days, you know. But we're out here. My gut tells me so. Anyways. This, then, is the greatest humanistic and historical task of the oppressed, to liberate themselves and their oppressors as well. The oppressors who oppress, exploit, and rape by virtue of their power cannot find in this power the strength to liberate either the oppressed or themselves. He means it literally. Only power that springs from the weakness of the oppressed will be sufficiently strong to free both. Hold on. Something in my teeth. The only power that springs from the weakness of the oppressed will be sufficiently strong to free both. If you don't have the money and the heritage and like the training or the upbringing to like purchase and take advantage of the means of defining human nature, you're weak. You're on the weak end of this quid pro quo relationship with the people who have the means of producing image. You're on the weak end. You are losing in this division of learning and probably in this division of labor. Because where the fuck else are you going to go? You lose your free will more and more every day. That's why you're weak. And it's that weakness that defines this class, that defines how we've been wronged collectively. And by whom. Okay, which is why any sort of democratic movement to schmoove this in America, the largest, most expensive military on earth, who regularly doles out security contracts and subjects people to the dollar oil system to keep its currency strong, which is a discussion much deeper than it sounds, but ultimately amounts to the fact that reform in America echoes through anywhere where its military force is used to colonize the planet, right? Reform in America, okay, closes the wage gap and the education gap in America so that these satellite operations to create conservatives with a total detachment of history from America who come in here and make decisions on behalf of very wealthy and anonymous individuals. All of those operations are pointless if you can shore up the wage gap and shore up the education gap in America. I think is an admirable angle, and it's certainly intuitive. So we have to understand this from this weakness. And as long as people are targeted for being weak, then they will have to continue to develop this consciousness of themselves from these places of weakness. Which is really fun. It's like a great fucking time. In 2015. But yeah, like, okay, so only power that springs from the weakness of the oppressed will be sufficiently strong to free both. Any attempt to soften the power of the oppressor in deference to the weakness of the oppressed almost always manifests itself in the form of false generosity. Indeed, the attempt never goes beyond this. In order to have the continued opportunity to express their generosity, the oppressors must perpetuate injustice as well. This is making too much sense, man. An unjust social order is the permanent fount of this generosity, which is nourished by death, despair, and poverty. That is why the dispensers of false generosity become desperate at the slightest threat to its source. Wow. True generosity consists precisely in fighting to destroy the causes which nourish false charity. False charity constrains the fearful and subdued, the rejects of life, to extend their trembling hands. True generosity lies in striving so that these hands, whether of individuals or entire peoples, need to be extended less and less in supplication, so that more and more they become human hands which work and working transform the world. Well, I only really understand this passage in like so I've read like a little bit of McLuhan, enough to understand McLuhan's ideas about media in like the general sense, like, and enough to like kind of define it, right? So like media is like anything that extends the human body. You can have hot media, you can have cold media. There's the jungle and the city. And that's about as much of McLuhan as I can remember from like the first like 5 or 6 chapters that I read. I'm pretty sure, let me just see. $1964. So it's entirely possible that Freire is conscious of the growth and centralization of power through media, because McLuhan was really cool and predicted the internet. This is like Freire's sort of McLuhan-esque like reach towards the future. There it is. Son of a bitch. All right. This is his grasp towards the future. And so sorry, my back started hurting and my diaphragm is kind of like in the same section. Ugh. So McLuhan, right? Like he talks about media as like any extension of the body, that all media can be defined by how it extends the human body. So like for example, if you think of like a telephone, it's like a remote ear and mouthpiece, right? And it extends your sense of hearing and your ability to express yourself through words, through like vocalization. And so like this idea that Paulo Freire like sees like the world headed in this direction. I mean, it's not unsubstantial. The idea that he's expressing here is that power would be centralized through like the development of media. He didn't know what a terminal was. He didn't know what a server was. He didn't know what software as a service was. He doesn't know about subscription fees. He doesn't know about premium services. He doesn't know about a behavioral futures market. Doesn't know about you know, the kind of metrics that are measured on human beings, but he understands that they are being measured. So he's coming from this very like grassroots sort of like self-enabling kind of place where he's like, okay, well, if the future's going to change, I mean, it's the people who have to change it, right? So they have to understand with what they might be told about this thing, that they do, that they should feel entitled to like more in life, or that they should work on humanizing life to make it more teachable or something like that. Like the image here obviously is like Nazi imagery. Like, he's saying like, it's many people believing like the fervent lies of a fool who whose might is right, um completely contradicts uh his sort of human focused ideals or whatever. Um whose might is right justification totally overrule his like human first sort of ideals. Extending their trembling hands. Yeah, because everyone knows that fascists produce weak people. I refuse to believe that fascists are the product of fascism. Probably because I can't accept it from how I've experienced life. I think the product of fascism is like fucking anarchy and capitalism most of the time. But that people understand themselves as like being more powerful than they are, um, completely confuses this and throws this out of whack for me. Um, and so like fascism doesn't. I don't know. I like. I'm sure at some point fascism does reproduce the nucleus of fascism, like a nucleus of fascist thinkers who, through their deep historical understanding of like figures of fascism, or through the careful and personalized dissemination of information to privileged individuals through the world's most sophisticated machine intelligence. Just saying. Um, reproduce these fascist ideas that make weak people. Why is fascism viewed as such a negative thing, as such a negative term? Because it is the abstraction and distillation of this idea that many weak people can be ruled through myth and the promise of a new chance at life. Which is maybe speaks more to why it's like such a modern idea. You can think of fascism as it's existed like in its historical forms, but ultimately, and I'm sure there's like a smart way of putting this, but you look into history to decide where your political rationale should lie, in a way that does not attempt to understand the world around you as it exists today, and may not even have to do with like the creation of like a nation, but nonetheless like promotes it, right? Which is just like confusing and awful. For someone like me who's like an outside observer, like obviously to like these people and people who believe in them, this is a very rational idea, and I'm sure if one of them explained it to me, I would understand why that person's ideas about fascism are the way they are. But in the bigger picture, where there are serious fascists out there who want to start a fascist revolution, and like any fascist revolution, never stop it. These are like serious ideas about like hegemony and nomic crises that exist and are like tangibly mutable by them via their media. And so it's very interesting. It's very interesting that he's able to hook into that idea about fascism without really saying it. It's probably because it is so easily confused and so many people find themselves attracted to it. This lesson And this apprenticeship must come, however, from the oppressed themselves and those who are truly solidary with them as individuals or as people. By fighting for the restoration of their humanity, they will be attempting the restoration of true generosity, who are better prepared than the oppressed to understand the terrible significance of an oppressive society, who suffer the effects of oppression more than the oppressed, who can better understand the necessity of liberation. They will not gain this liberation by chance, but through the praxis for their quest for of their quest for it, through their recognition of the necessity to fight for it. And this fight, because of the purpose given it by the oppressed, will actually constitute an act of love opposing the lovelessness which lies at the heart of the oppressor's violence. Lovelessness, even when clothed in false generosity. What if a computer could just, like, tear you up, spread you bit by bit across the nation? But almost always, during the initial stage of the struggle, the oppressed, instead of striving for liberation, tend themselves to become oppressors or sub-oppressors. This is true. The very structure of their thought has been conditioned by the contradictions of the concrete, existential situation by which they were shaped. Their ideal is to be men, but for them, to be men is to be oppressors. This is their model of humanity. This phenomenon derives from the fact that the oppressed, at a certain moment of their existential experience, adopt an attitude of adhesion to the oppressor. Under these circumstances, they cannot consider him sufficiently clear to objectivize him, to discover him outside themselves. Right. This does not necessarily mean that the oppressed are unaware that they are downtrodden. Hold on. Your throat muscles are on the back of your neck. Anything you need to make voices or to speak is in the back of your neck. This does not necessarily mean that the oppressed are unaware that they are downtrodden, but their perception of themselves as oppressed is impaired by their submersion in the reality of oppression. At this level, their perception of themselves as opposites of the oppressor does not yet signify engagement in a struggle to overcome the contradiction. The one pole aspires not to liberation, but to identification with its opposite pole. We want people to think granularly, to go step by step in deconstructing their anxieties. Maybe I should read the yellow book. I should read that yellow book, but I can't find my copy anywhere. Alright, anyways. In this situation, the oppressed do not see the new man as the person to be born from the resolution of this contradiction, as oppression gives way to liberation. New man, new man, new man. Boom, ideal. Boom, he's real. He's real, and he's the new man. Boom. Boom, J-Schlatt. Boom, Mizkiff. Boom. Who's that guy who was rolling on gotcha? Boom. Boom. What? Boom. Destiny. New man. New man. New man. The new man. In this situation, the oppressed do not see the new man as the person to be born from the resolution of this contradiction, as oppression gives way to liberation. For them, the new man or woman themselves become oppressors. Their vision of the new man or woman is individualistic because of their identification with the oppressor. They have no consciousness of themselves as person or as members of an oppressed class. This is very distressing to me. It is not to become free that they want agrarian reform, but in order to acquire land and thus become landowners, or more precisely, bosses over other workers. It is a rare peasant who, once promoted to overseer, does not become more of a tyrant toward his former comrades than the owner himself. This is because the context of the peasant situation, that is, oppression, remains unchanged. In this example, the overseer, in order to make sure of his job, must be as tough as the owner, and more so. This thus is illustrated our previous assertion that during the initial stage of their struggle, the oppressed find in their oppressor their model of manhood. What if boom, new man. All right. What if the new man was an egg? The new man's an egghead. What if he's a fucking egghead? So because one believes that they can hold stations of like this oppressive superstructure and wait for that one rare person to present themselves, that they'll just like know, like that's a good person and like that's a bad person, right? This is trying to understand white people, okay? These people can be bosses, right? So they see how their parents as bosses get government handouts and do all these things that contradict everything they say, right? So on some level, these people who are nice to me believe that they could identify me without ever knowing me or my history. And so the right people make it through the gate or something. This is all really distressing to me because like when I'm reading these things and I'm going through these books and these ideas, I imagine people just running off and doing their own thing and like becoming enabled to make decisions for a great deal of people who have been deemed unable to make decisions for themselves systematically, and then do what's worse ultimately for these people according to like a form or like a web form or like maybe they take a certain turn on their walk that day or something. Or maybe they decide to switch algos so that they can refresh their cortisol levels or something at a different time that day. And so like I see these people as largely untrustworthy and giving me a great deal of stress while I do go through these academic books, because sometimes I feel like they're the first person that anyone is talking to. Man, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like some of these assumptions, man. Why are you compartmentalizing me? Is it to make me impotent? Is it because I'm much more palatable as a weaker thing? Is that what you do with your station? You say, I may not recognize anyone, so to all of you, farewell. Like, what the fuck is that? Oh, well, this guy is a really trustworthy name. maybe this is what I'll bring to the schoolhouse today. Ho ho ho, and fucking everything dies. Like, that doesn't sound functional at all. I'm going fucking crazy. How are we gonna change? Man, I don't think I can I don't think I can reckon with life assuming I'm like the only person who like lives it. I don't know. I have a hard time reckoning with that. I'm digging deep within myself to see if there's like anything I know that could inform how this can be like a positive like jumping off point for people. But I'm also dramatic, so like I'm also kind of relishing in like the moment that I get to change my pose drastically. This is tough. I might have to read that yellow book before I get into this because this seems very like psychologically inspired and obsessed with its own time, which is great, which is fine because like structurally these things don't change because these people are like making promises at age 50 and like making good on them at age like 80 or something. Maybe they even live and die by the promise. Who cares? Even revolution, which transforms a concrete situation of oppression by establishing the process of liberation, must confront this phenomenon. Many of the oppressed who directly or indirectly participate in revolution intend, conditioned by the myths of the old order, to make it their private revolution. Man, I'm like, would you believe it if I told you that I was feeling off balance? The shadow of their former oppressor is still cast over them. Yeah, the revolution needs to be public, first of all. It needs to be free. It needs to start with the word free. And it should say free time. Dead ass. But people don't know how to be. People don't know how to be. No, because you know what they're going to do? They're going to see free time and they're going to say that's shopping time. Okay, but they're going to see free time. They're going to be like, that's drinking time. They're going to say free time. That's napping time. That's cleaning time. Presentation time. That's winning time, actually. That's time for me to figure out how to sell you AstroTurf better than I was before. Okay, that's it needs to say free fucking time. Okay, somehow. The fear of freedom which afflicts the oppressed, a fear which may equally well lead them to the desire to the desire. The fear of freedom which afflicts the oppressed, a fear which may equally well lead them to desire the role of oppressor or bind them to the role of oppressed, should be examined. One of the basic elements of the relationship between oppressor and oppressed is prescription. Right. Every prescription represents the imposition of one individual's choice upon another, transforming the consciousness of the person prescribed to into one that conforms with the prescriber's consciousness. Thus, the behavior of the oppressed is a prescribed behavior, following as it does the guidelines of the oppressor. See, when the wizard hands the critter the dark ball, an evil presence leaks from the orb and turns the critter purple and eventually into a beast. This is very important. This is really important. Because it's real. Okay, that's real, okay? You hold the dark orb, it's a bad thing, alright? Don't fuck with that. This is like my day one shit. If you hold the dark orb and an evil presence comes out, you are evil, bro. And you know who plays the villain? You know who plays the villain? The victim. Okay? Because the victim knows what's evil about the villain. Alright? Oh, but that's fucking cheesy. Two-dimensional. Holy shit, dude. But there's actually this dichotomy between the hero and villain that makes it look like it's different aspects of the writer's psyche. Except when I want to play her as like a sexy woman. Haha. Guys, do you think I should just be like a really sexy woman that dresses like evil, like I touched the dark orb? And should I be nice instead of evil? No, because you touched the dark orb, dude. Yeah. No, I'm busy. Thank you. Sounds great. No, I'm busy. And yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. You touched the dark orb. You took on the role of the oppressor. So like, why should people accept this transformation in their lives as something that's taken for granted? Like it's this is why maybe I come down on Twitch streamers so often, is because like they've replaced like writing and storytelling in society like very suddenly and like almost completely um in like the 6-year gap between like me and my younger brother. um and the amount of storytelling that happens in like your average YouTube video aimed at children, or like Twitch stream or YouTube stream that's monetizable, which means it's aimed at children, is staggering. Which is why I find it so important to be like this like fucking like keyboard warrior, to like maintain some semblance of like, or like continuity between like storytelling of the past and like storytelling today. Um Now obviously continuity in my mind might be very different from continuity in your mind, and maybe the continuity that you would prefer intuitively to enforce, according to how you've learned to enforce continuity, has more to do with upholding the power of the role and the ability of the role to affect what is like tangible based on the role's substantiation alone, which is a sick thing. I'm sorry that you feel that way, but maybe you're just not ready for this. You know, that's maybe not the most appropriate thing to be doing to like people's children. Or to people in their emerging adulthood as they begin to negotiate their life and the lines they draw between themselves and these organizations that have power over them. Because a lot of people decide that they shouldn't participate, and that they should just repeat a lot of stuff to get social credibility, which is concerning, really concerning for people in their early 20s. And so yeah, the evil orb, if the evil orb is touched, bro, that is completely significant in the sense that it is these structures of power, as they're reinscribed, becoming action in a future generation, as this secondary consideration to what the object of that person's desires is. Okay, they desire the orb. The orb can be good, the orb can be purified, but the evil that comes from the orb is ultimately evil. Okay? because we're talking about changing things to be better for people overall. It's not that hard to understand why certain people are unlikable because of how much they're like their parents. Some people don't have cool parents, you know? It's just what it is. Sounds like someone hasn't gone to that point where they can negotiate the terms of image themselves to negate the image that has surpassed you in its ability to inform others about you. Maybe you should be the better person and demonstrate that this image should be negated instead of willingly spreading it and reproducing it. The oppressed, having internalized the image of the oppressor and adopted his guidelines, are fearful of freedom. Freedom would require them to eject this image and replace it with autonomy and responsibility. Freedom acquired by conquest, not by gift. It must be pursued constantly and responsibly. Freedom is not an ideal located outside of man, nor is it an idea which becomes myth. It is rather the indispensable condition for the quest for human completion. Ooh, yeah. It is the fucking quest. It is the fucking quest, bro. I do not think you understand how significant it is that this is the fucking quest. I want I don't usually do this. But I had to Google this guy's name when I was looking for him. Have you seen a picture of Paulo Freire? Freire? Dude, look at this guy. He's so petite. It's awesome. He looks smaller than his beard, but I love that. I've been loving that. Pedagogy of the oppressed. I love him. He's so tiny. His ideas are bigger than him. Oh man. Yeah, he makes it work. He makes that thing. He makes the petite kind of goblin thing work really well in his favor, I think. Um all right. Anyways, to surmount the situation of oppression, people must first critically recognize its causes so that through transforming action, they can create a new situation. This is where people struggle. This is the point of contingency on which my involvement in history and the creation of life is mediated. Okay? This is where you pull me in. All right? Not in recognition of the problem, by giving me tools. Like a real go-getter. That guy's awesome. We love that guy. I'm that guy. That's why I'm here. To surmount the situation of oppression, people must first critically recognize its causes so that through transforming action, they can create a new situation, one which makes possible the pursuit of a fuller humanity. But the struggle to be more fully human has already begun in the authentic struggle to transform the situation. Although the situation of oppression is a dehumanized and dehumanizing totality affecting both the oppressors and those whom they oppress, it is the latter who must, from their stifled humanity, wage for both the struggle for a fuller humanity Wage for both the struggle for a fuller humanity. Wage for both. Wage for both. I was struggling. I was struggling with that one. Wage for both the struggle for a fuller humanity. No commas. The oppressor, who is himself dehumanized because he dehumanizes others, is unable to follow his lead. Is unable to lead this struggle. Yeah, I've noticed this. No, okay. Dude, I feel like the more ideas I try to fit into what I write, the less commas I'm using because it's like grammatically incorrect. But like the more commas I want to be using because like cognitively it's correct. Like in my brain, like the divisions are there. Like I would definitely put a comma after both. The struggle for a fuller humanity. Even if that's like grammatically incorrect. It just sounds like it reads like more cohesively. Ugh. Shadows. Shadows. Alright. However, the oppressed who have adapted to the structure of domination in which they are immersed and have become resigned to it are inhibited from waging the struggle for freedom so long as they feel incapable of running the risks it requires. Moreover, their struggle for freedom threatens not only the oppressor, but also their own oppressed comrades who are fearful of still greater repression. When they discover within themselves the yearning to be free, they perceive that this yearning can be transformed into reality only when the same yearning is aroused in their comrades. But while dominated by the fear of freedom, they refuse to appeal to others, or to listen to the appeals of others, or even to the appeals of their own conscience. My high energy fellows. They I mean, you're only going to notice the high energy fellows. All right. They prefer gregariousness to authentic comradeship. They prefer gregariousness to authentic comradeship. They prefer the security of conformity within their state of unfreedom to the creative communion produced by freedom and even the very pursuit of freedom. Sure. The oppressed suffer from the duality which has established itself in their innermost being. The duality? Pot of duality? The oppressed suffer from the duality which has established itself in their innermost being. They discover that without freedom, they cannot exist authentically. Yet, although they desire authentic existence, they fear it. They are at one and the same time themselves and the oppressor, whose consciousness they have internalized. The conflict lies in the choice between being wholly themselves or being divided, between ejecting the oppressor within or not ejecting them, between human solidarity or alienation, between following prescriptions or having choices, between being spectators or actors, between acting or having the illusion of acting through the action. This is becoming very divisive. Yet although they desire authentic existence, they fear it. They are at one and the same time themselves and the oppressor whose consciousness they have internalized. That is their truth. All right. The conflict lies in the choice between being wholly themselves or being divided, between ejecting the oppressor within or not ejecting them, between human solidarity or alienation, between following prescriptions or having choices, between being spectators or actors, between acting or having the illusion of acting through the action of the oppressors. between speaking out or being silent, castrated in their power to create and recreate, in their power to transform the world. This is the tragic dilemma of the oppressed, which their education must take into account. That's that white people social anxiety. That is the white people social anxiety that caused so many of my friends to like self-isolate throughout the 2010s. And me, once 2020, 2021 swung around and everything became confusing all of a sudden. Dark orb. Someone messaged me on Discord, dark orb. But not in chat. Come on. Come on. You can't just say dark orb to me on Discord. Expect me to ignore that? It is the dark orb. A ghost orb has flown into your skull. A ghost orb has flown into your skull. I'm sorry. It is terminal. A ghost orb has flown into your skull. Alright. I need to stop. That's that white person anxiety where in the absence of like sources of affirmation for themselves, they find themselves in an identity crisis, where no action can be rationalized through the presence, through this otherizing presence. It's like a little trapdoor that's like built into mainstream society to like drive individuals insane. It's really fucked up. It's so fucked up. It's so fucked up. Oh my god. It's so fucked up. It is this. It's yeah. In fearing a lack of reciprocation from the commodities in their life that have otherized them to becoming this well-socialized individual, something that can be mediated entirely without the direct voluntary conscience of those around them, can send someone into a self-isolating, anxiety-driven alienation from society, in which those who understand this person's situation may intervene for more nefarious purposes. And historically, that's how this has been used. You can call it a dream, you can call it a nightmare. I call it one of those strange walks. Following your algorithm, vibing is maybe one way someone would put it. But they would be putting it that way alone with themselves and everything that they could be or should be or weren't, or every message that they missed allegedly or whatever, you know, like, and it's somehow their disbelief and their ability to understand what's happening is impeding their ability to act independently based on information that they've learned in lieu of this sort of otherizing presence. By learning to believe in something greater than themselves, they have learned to stop believing in themselves. And it is through the breach of these emotional ties between someone and society as they experience it, that this psychological break can occur, due to large amounts of anxiety. People I've seen this happen to, my ex-girlfriend, one of my friends from that first femboy group who helped with the Bernie campaign for a while. They were, if you looked up femboy on certain websites. I think it's like the third most trafficked site on the internet or something like that. They were on the front page of that search result. And it happened to them. It happened to me when this whole like AI IDW crisis started. It's a strange thing, but it certainly is. It certainly is something that exists because of the connections between us, because of the intersubjectivity of reality, and this alienation from people, where like people can't talk about their emotional issues, so they're unable to feel assuaged by the presence of others during this like turbulent time. So one can be remotely defined because being able to like remotely communicate with someone over certain means is like very like powerful and mystical, and has all these connotations of safety, and symbolizes like a good learning environment for people who excel in school, for example. Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's a lot. It's a lot to address. But yeah, this is that kind of this is that thing that all my attractive friends now that I think about it. No, because I've seen a lot of people go through this. I say white friends because it's like the first people I think of, but no, there was also uh that Asian girl from Cupertino. She did this. Her ex-girlfriend did this. A lot of people did this at the time. Remaking accounts was really normal, and I'm sure still is. But like there's levels to it, there's frequencies to it. There's schedules to it. Really. If we're thinking in like a behaviorist sense of the word, there's schedules to it. So it's something that's like that seems to be deeply tied to this idea of mass dissemination of information and remote forms of trust, that people are just completely unaware of and is weaponized against them. So, like why aren't people catching on? Why are people's like beliefs in these things failing to be reinscribed so many times, failing to be addressed so many times? What is keeping people from like understanding each other better or whatever? It's very strange, but it needs to be negotiated between the groups. But ideally expressed very openly. Oh man. That's right. There's only 4 chapters in this book. Okay. What are we at? 2 hours. I think we're going to pause here. I think we're going to pause here. Where was I? Yeah, this duality. So we'll end on this. This book will present some aspects of what the writer has termed the pedagogy of the oppressed, a pedagogy which must be forged with, not for the oppressed, in the incessant struggle to regain their humanity. This pedagogy makes oppression and its causes objects of reflection by the oppressed, and from that reflection will come the necessary engagement in the struggle for their liberation. And in the struggle, this pedagogy will be made and remade. Thank you.